Hey church fam, it's Omar and John, and we got Kyle behind the camera, and this is the Divine Hustle Show for church creators. Collectively, we have over 3 decades helping the local church from full-time paid staff positions at mega churches to being a part of a local church plant here in Las Vegas as unpaid volunteers. We want to use our experiences from seeing both ends and that we've learned with both dynamics and help equip the local church reach more people with your creativity. And so whether you're on staff at a church or you volunteer or you are unpaid staff, this podcast is for you. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to build a creative team, or even just how to build when you feel like your team is small and you know you need more people.
Yeah, that's a good topic. That's a hot topic, actually.
And this podcast episode idea actually came from our DMs, and it was
Sarah G, 24. Shout out to Sarah, all the way from London, UK.
Super cool.
I'm just going to read this.
Yeah, for sure.
She says, "Hey, Divine Hustle team. So excited to see this podcast unfold. Such a great topic. I'm part of a local church plant in London, UK. I love being creative, but don't really have any experience of doing photography, video, etc. for church social media. Would love it if you could cover the topic of where to start when it's just you, a small team, to build skills and decide where to focus. Thanks so much for starting the podcast."
Awesome. I would say I can totally relate with you, and thanks so much for writing in. And I could relate with you in the sense that, like, when we started City Light Church 20 months ago, even prior to when we had our interest meetings and like preview services, help was kind of harder to come by, and that's just because it took a person like you or a person like me with initiative, right. And that's awesome. You know, like, I think the number one thing is that you need to identify yourself as the one who currently you feel the burden, you feel the need for this, and you essentially you're a leader. Like, I mean, I don't know if you feel that way or not, but you are a leader, especially being like kind of first to helping the church in this way, shape or form. And I just want to encourage you and thank you for being, having that burden. And I think more than anything, to know that your ideas, your input is valuable and validated and is needed more than anything. And so, yeah, we're super pumped. We came up with 5 kind of ways to kind of tackle this idea of how to build a creative team. And so I would say we went with the first one, which is the gift is in the house. Yeah. Essentially, that means just creating. You can create whatever you can with what you already have and who you already have.
That's so good.
What you're supposed to create currently, I would even say, is limited, but I would say your limitation allows you to be free inside of that. But you're supposed to create what you're supposed to create with who you have right now. Yeah. Don't feel like just because another church down the block, or even like another church you follow, like they might have a team of 5 people just doing photos while you're doing photo, video, social posting, all those things. But don't compare yourself to another church. The reality is, I think every church's uniqueness comes from the people of that house in and of itself.
Yeah, just don't fall in that trap that you feel like you need something that you don't have already.
Right.
And like, I definitely feel like sometimes the enemy will mess with your head and be like, you know what? Like, I need photo skill. I'm not good at this, and I need to find a good photographer, or good this, and we don't have that, so we're never going to move forward. Just look at what you have right now, even if it's like a graphic designer, or like maybe you don't even have a photographer, right? But you have a designer. So like I would take like quotes, like some tips would be taking quotes out of the sermon and designing something very unique and posting that online, and and just continue to do that.
Yeah, and I think creating, again, back with what you have, I'll probably say this a ton in this podcast over and over, but like, excellence is not a production, or it's not a product. Excellence is not a product. It's a spirit behind what it is being produced.
Right.
And so if you can, knowing your limitations, or knowing the resources you, I guess you could say, lack for now, if you can identify what you can do despite that, the first thing I think about is iPhone, portrait mode. Like, you could take awesome portraits of people who serve and get a three sentence testimonial blurb and post that every Wednesday, and it's like Wednesday shout out for them, whatever that may be. Like I even think like you could screenshot the songs on Spotify that the church is going to use this weekend, and then just swipe through to see our weekend set list. That took no graphic design. That took the songs you're going to sing this weekend regardless, but you're, using stuff that you already have access to. You don't really have to think. And so I would say number one is just simply knowing that the gift is in the house. Whatever you're supposed to produce is what you're supposed to produce.
Right. Create with what you have and who you have. And you touched on the second point a little bit about not comparing yourself to other churches or other Instagram feeds or stuff like that. Comparison is a killer of joy.
Right.
But it also is a killer of like everything in life, like motivation and
for sure.
And creativity. I feel.
No, yeah. And I legit, dude, Elevation Church is obviously killing it on so many fronts. But I do think about Chris Brown, the lead worship singer guy. Like, who were to know he just so happened to stroll in with the call of God on his life and like knew what he wanted to do, and based off of what God called him to do. Little did he know probably what Elevation would turn out to be and what he'd be a part of. But that's just like one story that we can kind of like see from the, far. But like, that's you, but that's somebody else too. Like there's somebody in your church that's probably already sitting in the pews. Maybe they're even serving in another area, and we'll talk about that. But maybe they're serving in another area, and that maybe there's a limitation there, but they would really be unleashed if they were in the creative, team or realm or whatever. But that's just the biggest thing, is just don't feel like a pressure. Like the pressure usually is self-inflicted, and you don't want to operate out of that place, because you'll never feel fulfilled. Like maybe for a day, maybe your Sunday you feel awesome, but then that church you're just following just went ham on like a new strategy, and you're like, crap, like they're doing this strategy, I can't keep up. Like, I don't know, that'll just keep running dry. So like what works for you guys is what will work for you guys. As simple as that. And I don't think you have to, overthink it or anything, but just don't compare. I think you can get inspiration from, see what they do. Like I used to see gifts from other churches, like, people, the team would go in and go out and do a gift, and I'm like, oh, I want to try that. And so I'll try things that I see based off inspiration, but like the pressure and need to actually make that and produce it, like I didn't want to carry that pressure. And so,
yeah, I feel like that's another trap is comparing yourself to like those types of things, but taking that inspiration is so key. I mean, the beauty of the local church is the expression of the church,
right? And
your unique expression at your local church, wherever you're serving, is so beautiful. And it's not like everybody else's, and I don't find it very constructive for churches to just look like other churches. And it's like, oh, this is all we look like. It's like, no, man, like your church is so unique,
for sure,
and where you're at, and like just use the gifts and tools that you have to express that and that culture. Because like when we all come together and share like the expression of the church and what's happening in church, the world just sees like all these different sides, and like the world gets inspired by that. And yeah, just be inspired by it. Don't feel like you got to compare like your feed to Elevation's feed or like Hillsong's feed or anything like that. They do cool stuff because they're inspired and they just create. So just create from that inspiration.
Yeah, for sure. Number 3 is this season is the best season to create systems around what you need. This season is the best season to create systems around what you need. The reason why I say this is because this is a God-given desire. This isn't like a fleshy thing that you feel, that like this team needs to grow or I need more people. That's God-given. That's like, okay, we need to get more people involved, and we really need to create. And so that, the message of Jesus is just put together really well for people who don't know Jesus. But I say this because there will be a time where you might get too far. You're 10 people deep now, and because there's no systems, it's only gonna cause frustrations, butting heads and stuff like that. And so take this time. Like if you were to have a photographer, what would you have them do? If you were gonna have a videographer, what would you have them do? Right. What are like the 5 videos that videographers will make? What's the shot list that you would need a photographer if someone was like, hey, I got a camera and a prime lens, like, dude, for sure, like we have this like photo, and then you could take photos from other churches if you don't already have them, and you have a shot list and a shot guide. And we'll actually make that available on our website. We have a City Light photo team kind of PDF that we go through with anybody who's coming in on the photo team. But that was created when we knew that the photo team needed to grow. Right. And so like, what are you creating creating? What systems are you creating to lower the level of entry and make it easier for somebody to jump in or jump on board? Assimilation, like how are creatives being, I guess you could say, filtered through? Like if somebody is there a spiritual gifts test? Or is there a next steps, a growth track? And then how does that connection happen? Like that usually is where the biggest frustration comes in, is like, here I'm a photographer and I have equipment and I want to serve, but I don't even know how to get you. So you had me take pictures. I don't know what to do with the pictures.
Yeah. Like that's like the worst thing to kind of do, is like have someone come up to you and be like, hey, I want to get involved with the photography team or the creative team. And then you tell them, all right, cool. Like show up with your equipment. And that's it. Like,
right. No, for sure.
Like giving them it's almost like setting them up for failure.
Right.
And like, so what happens when a photographer comes and they want to serve and they want to be part of the team? Like, what does your assimilation process look like to help them succeed and communicate to them that, okay, these are the photos that we're looking for.
Right.
So go ahead and take photos, and this is the process afterwards. So we're going to take it into Lightroom, or we're going to Dropbox it, we're going to Google share, whatever your process is, and then we're going to pick the best ones to showcase the culture of the church, and we'll use that for social media platforms or website or whatever. So giving them kind of like a system to work in so that they can succeed at what they do and not feel like the expectation was a failure.
Yeah, it was up in the air.
Sure.
And I think, like if you think about it, this is just like, it's a stewardship thing. Like here, so the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. When the workers come, when the workers come through your hands, are they slipping? Are they? Do you have anything in line for them? What's the next step that they're going to do? The first weekend they're going to do whatever you want them to do. And I think you have to view yourself essentially like an HR department. Like the transition of somebody getting onboarded, is that a seamless process, or does it usually people come in because they're not led well, or maybe they get confused, and that's what it is. It's frustrated. Like you get this person's having me come take pictures, but they're not even taking my pictures from me, or they're whatever.
Process. It's like if you have that burden and leadership to be like, I want to build a team, or how do I develop this small creative team. You also have the spirit of facilitating. So like you got to learn how to facilitate these things. So like onboarding someone is part of like what your skill set should be,
for sure.
So learn how to do that.
And that's kind of like just ministry across the board. There's probably a ministry that shines other ministries that is doing this really well. What are they doing? Steal from them in that regard, as far as like the assimilation goes, and getting people on board. The fourth idea is ask yourself, what do you need help with? And then here's a couple of thoughts. When that person comes on, how are they going to fit? What do they need? Can the church help a need that they have potentially in regards to, like, maybe they have a great camera body, but they don't quite have the lens. Maybe it's the other way around. What does your bandwidth look like? If you feel like you're stretched, maybe you just need to reallocate your energy toward what's most important. And I determine what's most important based off of what can I get the most out of Sunday with. So like if your time is spent cutting micro clips from your pastor's sermon, or making graphics that are shareable on Instagram, these are things that you can do multiple of because of Sunday. I think photography is a big deal, just because you can capture so much on a Sunday and then use it throughout the week. I don't necessarily hold, like vertical video in high regard as far as like somebody dedicated to filming vertically on the weekend. If you have that bandwidth, by all means, go for it. Other questions to ask yourself is, what can you delegate? There's something you're probably really good at, and the likelihood is you need to probably stop doing that, because you probably have the ability to create a system around that just because you know whatever that is so well. So what is that? Like, what are things that you can only do? Like, are you a bottleneck to a certain area because you're the only person doing it? Like, sometimes it's like, yo, search my heart, Jesus. Like, am I holding something back? Is the team not growing because of me? Like, these are legit questions just to ask, because you never know. And, I always want to ask that. And why are you the only person that can do it? One thing we're huge about, and we've been creating content for 10 plus years as far as like filming, photography, whatever it is is not being married to a process just because this is the way you do it might not be the best way.
Right.
Always be open to improvision or what
Imperfection. Right.
Improvising. Always be open to improvising a process.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always trying to find the next fastest, quickest way to do certain things.
Yeah,
And
just be a learner.
Yeah,
most
be a
of
learner.
the time, it's like you gotta walk with grace, especially when you're in leadership, and having the grace not only to onboard people or like photographers when they're making mistakes or anything. You're gonna deal with that
Right.
a lot of times. So like be a learner on this journey, and don't be such a stickler when it comes to like it's not perfect. It's not
right.
perfect.
No, for sure.
Like yeah, it's not perfect.
Right. The easiest thing that comes to you is usually the first thing you should offload. And I guess I could speak from experience. The easiest thing was photos on a weekend.
Yeah.
I felt like that was the easiest thing that was the one thing I probably could have offloaded. And so I created a system around that. And so people are able to come on board. It takes one sit down coffee date that like gets a person on board after they do next steps. And then we kind of just go from there. They get scheduled and all that stuff. And some pro tips, and this is as we close, think of yourself as a facilitator. You know, if you have this burden, you're a leader, and you would consider yourself one. Just think of yourself as you just want to get people in the right place. Yeah. If your worship team, like this is legit. This was just something we were thinking through with this. Is like a lot of the times there are like really numerically ministries, like the kids team has way too many, and they don't have way too many people, but like we have one service and they have a rotation of 3 people or groups.
Right.
They serve once a month. Like, hey, maybe somebody in there can help on the creative team once a month. We have a story of good old Daniel Emery.
Yeah.
Daniel Emery was he's a guitar player. He could play the bass.
He's been on the worship team for ever.
He's always been a part of worship. That's kind of just how he served. And we saw that he can be in that one position, or knowing that the team had a few guitar players and bass players already. We asked him, hey, Daniel, would you be open to potentially kind of running the show as far as like service goes? Like, could you schedule the people to fill in those slots, the pro presenter, sound, back of house or front of house, whoever calls it front of house, but yeah, so Daniel has grown in his leadership. Yeah. He's a bass player, he's a guitar player, but when he simply just adjusted seats, he really grew as a leader, and it's super cool. He's 21 years old. And he's having tough conversations, uncomfortable conversations, because that's leadership, uncomfortable conversations, and he's really just thriving. And I think he's even become like a pro at Pro Presenter, just because that's just his mind works really well. And we would have never known this. Yeah, would have never known this if our pastor didn't kind of like see that over his life. Yeah. And
I think again, also being a leader or facilitating, like your creative team is what do you see in the greatness of who you have? Like, what do you see for them in their ministry? Like, do you see them leveling up as a leader? And if so, giving them responsibilities or things that will challenge them and help them grow into that leadership role, that's really key as well.
Yeah. And one of our leadership values at City Light is like, it's empowering people. We're never dumping. We're not dumping responsibility, but we're delegating and we're sharing the load, and we're giving people the opportunity to grow in what God has for them. And there's nothing to be ashamed of in that regard. Don't be afraid to ask people. I found that most people want to be asked.
Yeah,
like most people are waiting to be asked. I was just waiting for you to ask me.
No one asked me.
No, straight up. I was just waiting for someone to ask me, and I'm like, dude, I'm in. Like, that's usually the question. So don't be afraid to ask people. And like, just as we close the final thought, just wrapping this all up, what do you do when you have a small team and you want to grow that team, whether it be creative or what have you? We would come to this consensus that you probably just need to create better systems or create systems. What's cool about systems is systems can grow, systems could scale, and because it was created at an early stage, you can just add fuel to that system, and it doesn't really change as it scales. As your church goes multiple campuses, whatever, it's more easier to change a system than it is to work in freedom. Yeah. And so be free inside the system, and you'll definitely have a better experience probably getting more people on your team.
Yeah. So the challenge for you is to take a look at your system right now. And where are the holes in that system? And if you haven't developed a system, start developing a system. Just like, even if it's a simple, like, this is what we do with our photography, or this is what we do with the graphics, or this is how we implement it. And then just write it down. And now you look at that process, and you're going to redefine that
100%.
like, through the seasons as you grow in that. But start with a system, and you're going to create more scalable impact through that.
Super practical. Like, we did this a couple weeks ago with Daniel Emery. We didn't have a written Google Doc of how to put in the SD card for the capturing of the message, format the card, do a certain step-by-step. And we created a Google Doc. I went through it one by one. He wrote it down, and now we have a document, and it, printed. And now, like, literally, you can just hand this to anyone, and they'd be able to run the camera and not, make a mistake. And so, like, keeping it really simple and easy, that was a practical tip. But, thank you so much for answering that question. We want to create a community of people that are open to share this open conversation about how to reach more people using your creativity. And so, like, if there's any pain points, if you need questions with certain systems, whatever we can do to help, we're going to try and do that, and also create resources for that. But we want to create these podcasts around your guys' pain points and stuff like that. So make sure you hit us up in the DM at Divine Hustle. We also have a form on divinehustle.com. But other than that, we're super grateful for you, and we thank you for checking us out. We'll see you in the next video or podcast. Peace.